Hey everybody, Comic Crack back again with another video. I'm making this one, it's kind of like going to be a movie talk one again. It's just been on my mind the past few days, as I was saying in the video the other day. Sorry, because I'm driving around a lot for this current job, because we're off of the main unit set, so we're heading to places before and after people get there. So I'm driving around our cube truck with our gear in it. So I'm listening to the radio a lot and discovering, especially in the times that I'm working, there's a lot of great programming on the university stations that I normally don't get a chance to hear. I mentioned it before about Democracy Now! That gets replayed on both, there's University of Winnipeg and University of Manitoba. Each one have a radio station, and each one plays Democracy Now! At different times. The U of W has it earlier on, and another show that I discovered yesterday was something called Alternative Radio, which there's a website. I'll make sure I put links to all these things that I talk about. So I caught the tail end. Well, I caught most of a talk given by a guy named Paul Ehrlich, who, according to the site, he's a professor of population studies in the Department of Biology and president for the Center of Conservation Biology at Stanford University. Member of the National Academy of Sciences, received numerous honors and prizes, active in the Millennium Alliance for Humanity and the Biosphere, is author of over 40 books. So he was giving a talk called Distress Signals from Earth, recorded in Fort Collins, Colorado on February 17th, 2014. And it was really, really interesting. It seems to be a topic, obviously, that, I mean, is out there all the time, but it seems like all of a sudden in this past week that I've had run-ins with different programs or different conversations where it's been specifically about what we've done to the planet and what's going to happen and what can we expect. And his was particularly interesting because again, it's just a cursory kind of listen. By no means, I mean, I don't know much about the guy, I don't know much about some of the research he cited, so I don't assume that all this is 100% fact. It's just his kind of biography, his bio makes it more believable, as far as he's not just some whack job who's saying the world is going to end. That was the thing that impressed me the most. It seemed very realistic, as far as like, listen, we're gonna forego the whole conversation of, is this really happening? Whether you believe it or whether you don't believe it, here's the proof that you should believe it. It's a fact. We fucked up the planet. It's a fact. These are the things that we're going to see happen. Here's what's gonna happen because of the population size we have on the planet. Apparently the population in the next 50 years is supposed to jump, I think he said 6 billion people. And he said that when he was born, the population of the planet was like 2.5 billion or whatever the number was. So it's in 50 years it's going to jump 3 times the amount of what the population was when he was born. Now, you get all those kind of statistics, and it's like, yes, that does sound pretty heavy, but what's the other side? Like, how many people are going to die in the 50 years? How many, et cetera, et cetera. So there's things to look into with his discussion, but it was really, really interesting because it brought up some angles that I hadn't really given much thought to. And one of the things that really struck me as interesting was that if we're supposed to get rid of, if our winters are going to become warmer, shorter, etc., that sort of thing, especially impactful for us here in Winnipeg and in further north and things. He says that the one thing that winter ends up doing is it becomes a very effective pest control. So you have all these pest populations that die out over the winter, and then when spring and summer hit, they have to kind of re-establish themselves and become born again when you have shorter winters and then eventually no winters or warmer winters, there's not that kind of natural pest control going on. So it doesn't, that the populations just grow, which then of course, when you extrapolate that, he talks about things like crop growing and food, where we're going to have a problem feeding the population, period, let alone now all these changes happening. What's that going to do for crops and things that we're growing to feed the population that we do have? It's going to diminish that, so it's looking into other things, and he just kind of talks about how we're going to have a change in our kind of outlook and how we hold ourselves. Now, I don't want to make this all about, I just thought that was a really interesting thing that I hadn't really seen talked about as much, because what you end up hearing is a lot of trying to make people believe that we've done this damage already, and it's just a fallacy and this sort of thing. So that led me on to a fact of like, that would make a great kind of sci-fi story, set it in that world. You don't see that as much in like these post-apocalyptic kind of things. And I haven't, doesn't mean that it's not out there, because there's a ton of things that I haven't seen. So, but then it got me starting to think about like eco-terror movies and things that I've have kind of an affinity for. I love the ecological horror movies, where nature kind of rears its head against man and kind of it's a revenge movie, just from nature against man. So I just kind of wanted to talk about a few that I have in my collection, and one that I'm currently downloading right now because I want to see it again, and I'd like to own it on Blu-ray. So one of the first ones I'd like to talk about is there's a director, Val Guest, British director, and he did this movie, The Quatermass Experiment, aka The Creeping Unknown. Hopefully, it's pretty gloomy here today. We've had rain all day, so hopefully the lighting is still okay. I'll bring that down a little lower. So there's that one, and the only reason I'm showing this is this isn't the one. It's a pretty good one. What makes Val Guest really interesting is his use of news footage and stuff that's not staged, newsreel footage and things that he'll insert into the movie, so it gives it a feel of being tied to the real world, even though it's talking about, like this one, it's a spacecraft returns to Earth with only one terrified passenger left aboard and a creeping monster. So it's still based in kind of sci-fi and things like that, but having that stock footage use really ties it to our world a little more, which really gives it an interesting feel. And where he did that the most effectively out of again, I've only seen 2 of them, was this one called The Day the Earth Caught Fire.
The time is now 10:51. 9 minutes before countdown. 9 minutes.
9 minutes before countdown. 9 minutes while the world waits and wonders. Share, if you dare, the unbearable suspense of men and women who have never in their lives faced greater peril. The day the Earth caught fire will burn itself into your memory. Is it fiction or is it fact?
What's the nutation of the Earth? Nutation? Well, it's a slight oscillation on the Earth's axis, caused by the pull of the sun and the moon on the equator. You see, there's a slight bulge on the...
There's also an item here about axis rotation. There's been an 11-degree variation, whatever that may mean.
They've shifted the tilt of the Earth. The stupid, crazy, irresponsible bunglers.
Incredible movie. I've watched it a few times, and it's just... all the stock footage is brilliant. What they did to tint the film, the negatives for some of the scenes to make it seem more disastrous. This one in 1961, the British Academy Award, it was a winner for the best screenplay. 99 minutes. When the United States and the Soviet Union simultaneously set off nuclear explosions, the London Daily Express begins to report on bizarre weather changes around the world. But when the reporters dig deeper, they discover that the blasts have knocked Earth off of its axis and sent it hurtling towards the sun. Brilliant premise, great premise. Takes place in a newsroom. I believe Val Guest worked in a newsroom at one point. The editor in the movie for the London Daily Express was an editor in real life. The lingo and the speed at which they talk and the way that they communicate with each other, especially in the newsroom, but it goes throughout the movie, is just brilliant. It's snappy and quick, and again, all those kind of things lead an air of reality. So you have a real editor. You have this stock footage of protests and riots and things that are interspersed. And one of the scenes, particularly brilliantly, they came across like a big protest, and they decided to quickly film a couple of scenes within the protest and have the characters interact along the edges and into the groups of the protesters. So that worked really well. But and it's basically this, and all it is really is this world coming to terms with again, this is the fact, this is the reality. Oh my God, what have we done? We're hurtling towards the sun. What do we do now? You know, and just kind of existing from there. The main character is this hardcore alcoholic, and so he's coming to terms with that because he's had this messy divorce, and they have a child involved, and so that kind of mirrors the rest of the disaster. And it's kind of his last news article on the state of the planet.
In the next few moments, we will try to give you an impression of a new kind of film experience. If your curiosity is aroused, you are ready for Phase 4.
I believe that they'll move rather quickly into desert areas, taking over the countryside first, then laying siege to towns and cities. We have only one chance. Why don't they kill us? What do they want?
Saul Bass was famous for putting together title sequences for movies. I feel like I've maybe talked about this before in a video. Forgive me if I have mentioned it. We'll pretend like I haven't. He was basically just this artist who was putting together title sequences. I think his most infamous one, don't quote me on this, I believe it was Vertigo, but I can't remember. No, it might have been Psycho, might have been a few Hitchcock movies. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, this was the only movie that he directed, and it is brilliant. So it's called Phase 4, and it's basically about ants starting their takeover of the planet. After a mysterious cosmic event, strange structures and patterns begin to appear in the desert. When scientists begin to investigate their origin, they're shocked to learn that they are the work of super intelligent ants. The ants appear to be trying to communicate with us, and they're not happy about all those magnifying glass experiments. Directed by Oscar winner Saul Bass, Phase 4 is a terrifying glimpse at nature run amok, with amazing ant footage that will make your skin crawl. Now, that may sound hokey as all hell, but I shit you not, it is a brilliant movie. It's stunningly good, and as they said in the all the macro and micro photography of these ants underground and just interacting with each other, interacting with the humans, interacting with the environment, beautifully done. And he got a lot of influence from this movie called The Hellstrom Chronicle.
My name is Nils Hellstrom. That name rings a bell at all, it's probably in connection with the words fanatic, lunatic, heretic. Actually, I'm a scientist, and these other descriptions have come as a result of my dedication and my work. My obsession, some have called it, with certain findings I've made. It's not easy to be obsessed. The past 18 months, it's cost me 2 fellowships, 1 assistant professorship, and even a few friendships. I don't care about that, really. In a way, it's kind of flattering. What I really regret is that after 9 years of concentrated work, I've learned something that no one wants to hear. But unless someone does hear, unless someone is at least exposed to it, we as a species might pass from existence without ever knowing why.
I'll tell it to you once. I'll tell it to you simply. I'll tell it to you in terms that no one likes to hear. If any living species is to inherit the earth, it will not be man. Long before the time that hydrogen bombs and pollution have put an end to us, we will face competition for the earth itself, from a life form we arrogantly ignore. We will be overrun, deposed, and succeeded by an army that was here long before us and is ultimately better equipped to survive than we. Battalions of mindless soldiers entering the contest with capabilities beyond our imagination. Yes, I'm talking about insects. And if you at this moment dare to think this is lunacy, I invite you to remain in your seat, draw your own conclusion, and learn the inevitable destiny of ignorance.
1972 Academy Award winner for Best Documentary. They really should have had documentary in quotes. Professor Hellstrom, a famous entomologist, doesn't exist. Not a real guy, an actor playing a part, is so shaken by the savagery and ferocity of the predatory insect world that he films this documentary to warn mankind of its danger. Their documentaries in quotes, featuring stunning microphotography of a variety of insects and plants that include ultra close-ups of wars between ant colonies and a gigantic praying mantis practicing cannibalism. This unusual blend of horror film and nature study won an Academy Award for Best Documentary in 1972. So it's brilliant, and for a lot of the same reasons this one is, because you just have this footage of these insects and things, you can infer all sorts of evil doings by way of music and dialogue, and especially in Hellstrom Chronicles, his very dramatic readings of things. Olive Films put this one out, just as an ad for them. So apparently Saul Bass was highly influenced by this one, that he decided he would do a science fiction movie based on, okay, well, let's take that idea of ants getting together and are sick and tired of everything, and they want revenge, basically. Beautifully done. There's a few characters in it. It really is just creepy as all hell and really skin crawling. So there you have that. Those ones are definitely a pair if you are able to find. I don't know how easy it is to find these. I think Phase 4 is relatively easy to find now. I'm not sure how easy Hellstrom Chronicles is, but I'd suggest watching both of these back to back, starting with Hellstrom. And then the one that I'm downloading right now, I saw it once and I was completely blown away by it. I believe there was a remake. If you do go for this one, go for the, I can't remember the year, was it 1978 or 1974? Anyway, it was an Aussie-sploitation movie, so an Australian exploitation movie called The Long Weekend.
Listen to the sound of evil. It is out there, waiting. dangerous, powerful, deadly, invisible. They came to take a holiday. Now, they are running for their lives. Because something is out there. There are secrets. There are mysteries. There are forces beyond imagination. Challenge them, and every living creature, every blade of grass will turn against you. Prepare yourself for the fright of your life.
Christ!
Long weekend. An experience in terror and suspense.
This one is absolutely incredible. It's a couple that decides to go out into the outback, into the wilderness and camp and try to rekindle their relationship because they're fucking horrible human beings to each other and to their environment and everything around them. So they're kind of this, they're our main characters, and throughout you see them arguing and fighting and littering and polluting, and just they don't give a shit about each other, they don't give a shit about their surroundings, they don't give a shit about anything, and then nature starts to fight back with the strangest creature, the slowest moving creature you've ever seen in your life, but it's riveting, and it's mildly terrifying because it's because of that, you know. It's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people like zombie movies. It's especially the slow walking zombies. It's no matter what you do, they may be walking slow, but those motherfuckers are gonna get you. They are gonna get you. You can't escape it. It's the same kind of premise with this one. This creature is so slow, but you know what? He's gonna get you. It's going to devour you and your children and move on to the cities and this sort of thing. It's really, really well done. I would highly recommend that one. So those are kind of the eco-terror or nature revenge or whatever you want to call it, doomsday, or those are some of the films that I have. I don't have many more than that. I've done some searching lately for people's top 10 lists of eco-terror, ecological horror movies, and found a couple of titles that I don't really know. I think one was called The Last Winter. That was a much newer one that sounded pretty interesting. So yeah, that was my thought. Like I said, sparked by all the horrible things I've heard on the radio. The last thing that I'll tell you that talk said, he said that at one point he said that I have a argument every once in a while with a friend of mine. I believe there's a 10% chance that we will survive. He believes that there's a 1% chance that he will survive. He says the bottom line is this: we still believe there's a chance, but we have to make changes, and we have to prepare ourselves for the inevitable, and we have to stop having discussions on whether or not it's true or false, and just accept the fact that it's true and try to move on and try to make the world even a little bit better for our, he was talking about his great-grandchildren that he has now, and he says every generation of children that appear in his family, it rekindles this emergency need in him to want to try to help out. But he also says that when it comes to great-grandchildren, he can't identify as much with them because it's those so far. He recognizes them as little people, but he doesn't have the same recognition as he does with like his children or even just his grandchildren. So that's an interesting idea too, about this disassociation that you have from further generations. So it becomes kind of like that's going to happen long after I'm dead. So it almost seems like it's an unrealistic, intangible kind of time that you can't really get your hands on. But as I said, he does feel that we do have a 10% chance of survival. So let's hope we all survive and dig into some eco-horror movies in the meantime and prepare for doomsday.